Hey everybody, let's do the audio check real quick. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Tim's going to be joining me in a second.
Sound is good.
We had a clarification that we needed to do on the top 10, so Tim ran off to talk to Christina. Okay, so I jumped in last minute. Mark had a bit of an indigestion and wasn't feeling well, and as you all know, sometimes these can turn into marathons, so I said, don't worry about it. I got tons of words. A lot of stuff happened this week. I got plenty to say. We are still buried in issues that are keeping us from doing testing right now. We were working on this at the very end of last week, just trying to figure out the scope of what was going on. And Andrew was trying to do kind of a clutch play last minute to band-aid things on Friday. That didn't pan out, so we canceled that testing. This week, the scope of that kind of ballooned into a kill it with fire version of the band-aid. And Andrew's still working on that. George is helping him out. Dave is helping him out. It's going to be an ongoing process, and what we're doing is the gist of this is, as Andrew put it, we need to get this solved so that we can get rid of that noise so we can figure out what else we're missing. I've got a top 10 item that explains the issue a little bit more. It's just kind of one of those, we need to put some time and effort into client stability. This also leaked into editor stability, and it kind of created a bottleneck for different people, so we've had to be creative, just kind of working around these issues this week. So right now we have no testing planned for the weekend. Sorry. We have a lot of cool changes that are going in that I'm going to speak to that you're going to be like, oh, cool, I want to test that, and we don't have that ready yet. But hopefully next week we'll make some progress on it. Andrew and George will be continuing to work on it, and we will let you know. So sorry about that, because a lot of these items are cool. We're starting to make, gamifying stuff, adding new things in. So hopefully you guys go, oh, I want to test, and that'll be next week. And here comes Tim. Did you figure out the answer?
I did.
Cool. So we do user stories. If you're new, I'm not going to give this too much of a preamble, but it's basically the much more in-depth, detailed version of our top 10. Our top 10-ish we do once a week. The user stories we now do once a month instead of every 2 weeks, and that was just to give Brittany and I a little bit more of a break between other producer tasking. So this week is user stories. There's 105 completes at a 24 old cards with 93 completes and 4 new cards with 12 completes. That's about average, a little bit higher. So that's good. We haven't been adversely affected even by these issues we've been seeing now. So if you're interested in all the little details of things that get accomplished, look at the user stories on the website. There, you can search them and look at cards. So let's go ahead and get into the top 10. We have 13 items, my lucky number, as I was born on Friday the 13th. And it literally is Friday the 13th. Tim's gonna, you love that, don't you? Okay, so one of the cool things, this was particularly cool for me because as a producer, there's always...
back your coffee.
I'm on stage, I kind of wake up. So one of the cool things is as a producer, you don't really like those unknowns, and with
Just so you know, it's the 14th.
Damn it!
You really think?
Yeah, that's why Mark is over there smiling.
Oh man, this timing.
I thought it was.
Oh my god!
I thought it was the 13th. Well, no, I said it was the 13th.
He's not good with dates. He's the
Friday,
producer.
Wait,
Mark.
I said Friday the 13th. Wait a minute.
It's okay. The other producer
I
corrected him.
said Friday the 13th. I didn't say 13th. That was my intent.
Brittany
I'm all-
caught it first. Making with the joke.
Yes. I wasn't
leave that to
trying to
Mark.
say it was the 13th. Friday the 13th. That's what I said.
Oh,
I actually did get it right.
he's being clever.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Okay, sure.
fuck you, bud. Fuck you. You don't know how many times I've said "fuck you guys."
There's a disclaimer. You can swear on the stream.
So, okay, I'm going to keep going. Siege engines. One of the unknowns. So, engineering is always unknown. You never know how long anything's going to take. It's always solving a new problem each time. Art, you solve the problem once, and you pretty much start replicating that moving forward, and it's pretty easy to track. One of the unknowns was, what is it going to take to get something that's not a player character animating in the game? Plus, we added in a new animation system, a new ability system, and now we needed to hook those pieces together for siege engines. So Scott did a really quick, good job of a siege engine, the Scorpion. You roll it back, it holds, and then it fires, and it has a little bit of a recoil. Matt actually got this working this week, so all we've actually seen so far is a little GIF, probably off of his computer. But it's one of the cool things that kind of starts making it feel more like a game. The next step is to do a second pass of the animations, which will include more of the bottom part of it, so it kind of has a cool rock back. We have to do, we're going to have conversations with Andrew about pairing up animations so that we can pair a character to it, so he'll go through all the motions of loading it and firing it. And bolt-based siege abilities. So right now we're just using arrows, so we need to get into making bolt-based abilities.
So just for the folks who made it into the alpha that we did on the 4th, you saw the siege engines moving around and shooting, and we had fireworks going. We've added to that stuff like the Scorpion actually pulling back the arms and those flexing and actually animating. Just so you're clear, what we had before, there weren't any actual animations. We were just pointing it at where you were firing. Now it actually animates, and you get to see it draw and fire. And,
yeah.
It's cool.
So along with that and sieges and a lot of these mechanics we're going for, including long distances for archery and aiming that we've been focused on. Late Friday, after we'd already written the top 10 and had kind of moved on to other things, Andrew got better timing in for the animations for the archers. For anybody who's played, it was fairly obvious that the timing was never correct. You'd kind of start animating and your bow would fire, you'd hear the noise, and then he'd kind of finish up. It was all just a mess. Andrew cleaned that up. The other cool thing that he did was he got in IK on the arms. So now as you're aiming, the guy will actually aim and does everything correctly. So the next step Andrew wants to get to, and this may not be the most immediate thing that Andrew works on, but the next thing he wants to do is getting the actual arrow, based on the different arrow types that you can use for the different abilities, to pop into your hand and load into the bow and then disappear and then spawn in front of you when you fire. So that's going to be a cool thing. This is a fairly techie thing. You want to speak to that one?
Sure. So
and I prefaced where we are on this
right,
while you were gone.
Okay. So we've been doing a lot of work on client stability recently. A big part of that may or may not have gotten discussed is we're working on, always keeping an eye towards our bot testing to see how many dudes we could get on a server. And we were hitting a point where the server was doing good and we couldn't get a client in to see how many awesome bots we had running around. So between that and wanting to get a test out to the beta, and the stability on the client just wasn't up to our standards for what we like to show our beta bros. We've been doing this focus on client stability the last week or two. And so we've had this thing hanging around for a while that we call the scene lock. And basically, anytime you wanted to add a renderable to the list of things that would get rendered, aka the scene, you had to make sure it was done in a way that was safe and friendly to a multi-threaded environment. We always talk about how we try and use as many threads as possible, as efficiently as possible, as often as possible. We want to use all of your CPUs all of the time so that we can give you a smooth and rich experience on the client. And we just discovered that there were a bunch of little bugs all over the place related to this particular system, such that it became apparent that the system itself was too easy to make mistakes with. And so we were actually this week going to just try and band-aid it so that we had a little bit more time to plan, and Andrew and George could get some quality time together next week. And it just became apparent that this was just a thing we needed to do. So we bit the bullet, and this week Andrew and George and Dave, I think, have been the main guys spearheading this, have been working on rejiggering the system, refactoring this system, so that it's just easier for folks to use properly. The end result, we hope, is a more performant client, and B, a more productive code base, so that folks who aren't intimate with the details of the scene can use this particular system to add new features without having booby traps that they have to be quite as concerned about.
Last week, late Friday, you said something to me, and I was curious if it was still relevant, that you were saying that a lot of this code related to this issue was written ages ago, when it was just Andrew and several junior engineers.
Yeah. What I was telling, excuse me, what I was telling Tyler is a lot of this particular system was written, 2, 3, 4 years ago when it was Andrew and a bunch of junior programmers, myself included, and we've been at this for several years now, and even the East Coast team is not the same team we were then. We've got far more experienced engineers. We've had more time to flesh out these systems, to figure out where our problems are, where our bottlenecks are, and then on top of that, we've added a bunch of senior engineers over in the West Coast office who have also had an opportunity to both contribute code and to mentor some of the junior, now mid-level engineers that we've got on the East Coast. And so just the general ability for the team to produce more intelligent, more powerful, more flexible, more robust code, as Tyler likes to say.
Well, now that everybody teased me, I'd use it more.
Yeah. And so, stuff like this is going to happen occasionally, just where we've got code that was made basically by a different team than we have nowadays, and we can do it smarter, faster, better, and give you guys a much better experience, a more stable experience.
I'm hearing the $6 Million Man music in my head.
and that's what we're doing. And this isn't, in case anybody gets concerned, this isn't like rehabilitation scale.
No.
We've spent a week on this. There will probably be a couple more days next week, and then hopefully our goal is a much more stable client, and then the code itself will empower engineers to be more productive because there will be fewer landmines that they have to worry about stepping on.
Yeah, this is definitely a positive thing. It's just kind of a pain in the ass thing.
Right.
Let's see. Item updates. You actually went and talked to Christina about that.
Yeah. So this talks about support for item slots went in with the changes to support make recipes. That was last week's stuff. We're now able to specify items in data sheets and what they can be fully made. So I went and talked to Christina a little bit about this because I wasn't quite sure what item slots are. And this allows us, moving forward, to instead of saying, I want to craft a sword, and you take an alloy and make a sword, and the sword has stats derivative of the alloy. This allows us to, in the future, say, I want to make a sword from a blade and a hilt and a crossguard and all of these
Sounds
parts.
like I should rewrite that. It's not item slots, it's like item parts.
Sort of. I mean, the tech term is sub-item slots. Get with me and Christina afterwards. Okay. But it allows us to make more interesting choices when you guys start crafting weapons. So instead of this thing just being, an iron sword, eventually it could be you have an iron blade with a copper hilt and a diamond crossguard, and each of those contributes a differently weighted amount of stats to the final weapon that you'll be using in combat. So lots of cool flexibility, crafter features going in there for actually making stuff.
Yeah, and for Beta 1, this won't be visually represented. You'll still have a cool-looking sword. You just won't have all the different material changes based on what you created it from. You won't have the whole selection of hilts. That's a very complicated system that we, just like this, are starting to kind of prepare for.
14.
It was good. He was about to forget again, I think.
God. Well, like I have...
Mark would like everyone to know that it's Friday the 14th. And as part of that, we also added some...
No, don't hover. I don't need you to remind me in 2 more minutes.
No? You sure?
Yes.
It might be the 14th by... Oh, wait, no, that's already here. We've also added some protections so that you can't put a container inside of it.
Yeah. So I like this one. I wrote it as, also in an effort to avoid creating rips in space and time, we've added protection to avoid putting a container or a vox inside of itself, creating voxception. And we had a joke.
That's not how you use that.
Voxception?
Yeah, no, it's just ception.
Oh, that's how Brittany used it.
Ception doesn't mean a thing inside of a thing.
Brittany used it.
She's wrong.
All right. Ha! I get 14th, you get ception.
She wouldn't be the first person to make this mistake. We'll give her a
We actually made a joke about this a couple of weeks back, too, where it was you could put an item within an item that has other things in it. Okay, building segmentation. This one's fairly cool. Why don't you go ahead and more about this?
We've had this on the client for a long time. Basically, what we did is many moons ago when we put the building building stuff in. We take all the blocks that are part of a building and we generate a bunch of vertices and turn them into a mesh. And then that mesh gets turned into a thing that we render on your screen, and it gets turned into a thing that goes into physics so that you can walk on it. Because reasons, what would happen is if you added a block or removed a block, we'd have to do all of that work over again. And so we
rebuilding it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you placed one block on your plot, then you would have to regenerate all of those vertices and
At
then
least server
return them
side.
in both on the client and the server.
Okay.
And you would have to return them into a thing that you could render and return them into a thing that you can stand on and collide with. So we broke the building up. We segmented the building into little smaller pieces. And so if you put a block on a building, all we have to do is regenerate that one particular piece. And
Section, you mean it's a segment. It's all segmented. So
right,
it's
yeah.
like maybe
Just imagine like
100
it's on a
blocks
grid.
versus 4,000 blocks.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And so the building's on a grid, and just imagine like we cut it in half on each axis, and now it's 8 pieces instead of 1. And so you place a block, and instead of having to rebuild the entire thing, you just rebuild 1/8 of it. That's been on the client for a long, long time. It hasn't been on the server, and what that meant was it was almost more expensive to change buildings on the server than it was onto the client, and that was affecting how long it took for us to propagate changes, be they from damage or adding blocks to the server.
Anybody who was testing specifically what we're talking about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was if you damaged a building and then kind of quickly stepped forward like you were going to go through it, you would still hit those blocks because the server still felt there was collision there and the server hadn't updated everything.
There's still some of that. Rob is looking into, there's about a 250 millisecond delay between when you hit a building and when your client sees that hole appear in the building. And so there's just, it depends exactly what state the server is in when you try and do that in terms of what your client experience will be. So we're actually actively working on that right now. What this does is basically just allow us to, it means that anytime there's a change to a building on the server, it takes less time to update it, which means that that CPU time can be spent doing more buildings or more frequent updates to buildings or more frequent updates to players. It's just CPU clock, and so now we have more of it because we're doing less work.
And doing this is cool because it gets us closer to
bigger buildings. So at the time, on a plot with, I want to say, and Rob's going to slap me because I don't know the exact numbers, I think 30,000 blocks. It took roughly the same amount of time for us to calculate stability, which is the building sort of collapsing on itself because you build a shitty building. It took us roughly the same amount of time to do stability as it did for us to generate the collision information. Now it is like 1/10 the amount of time to generate the collision, and so the next bottleneck is stability. But what this means is we can go up to larger buildings faster than we could before, and then we'll hit the next bottleneck, which is stability. So moving towards having much larger buildings. So instead of the keeps that we've got now, and I forget the dimensions, I want to say they're like 40 units.
I was going to say it was
side.
200,000 total that you could stick in there based on height or something like that. I could be wrong.
Right,
Rob's
but
gonna kick
we
me too.
limit to a number that's smaller than that. But basically, we would like to move plots from the size they are now, which is both the dimensions of the plot that you can build in and the number of blocks that you can put into that plot, to a larger number so that we can start building really massive keeps. And we're not quite there yet, but this is a step to get us much closer than we were.
And one of the things we can do in the meantime is to break up the number of plots. We can put the plots adjacent to each other so that the stability calculations aren't as impactful in gameplay. One of the things Rob and Tim and I were talking about is if you've tested on the small beta map 3, it's got the little keep in it that I built ages ago. The goal we're pushing towards is basically
Take out all the
replacing
prefabs.
all of that and making it all blocks and putting 4 corners for towers, a gatehouse, and then walls. And while we are getting towards bigger pieces, part of the issue with that next bottleneck is stability. So one of the things Rob was saying is we could just make a plot that is here's I'm a wall and here's I'm each of the towers, and then backers could go in and build those independent. What that would mean now is if I knock down the tower, the stability calculations are not going to bleed into and affect the wall that's adjacent to it. But like I said, this is all just you kind of have to dig through some weeds to find the next ones and then the next one.
Yeah.
And a lot of this works. I mean, we in all our testing, but we have very lofty goals and very hard to do things that we're trying to do, which is these big sieges with lots of players, lots of building up states, server physics. It's tough work. So thanks for being patient.
Yeah. So and as Tyler says, like, we do have keeps, we do have structures that are large enough that they've got an inner keep and an outer wall, and you can put doors on them and go in and out. We've already got that. What we're working towards is making them massive.
Yeah.
And we're not quite at massive, but this week they got bigger.
Yeah.
Speaking of massive, Massively Overpowered just started hosting us. So hello,
Oh.
Massively Overpowered.
Hey guys, thank you.
Which this will be an interesting segue with terrain control points.
Which is number 6.
I have words for that.
Yeah.
Did you want to say
Tyler
something?
will have words for that, but I'll let him go into that in more detail.
The art side.
Yeah, the art side. The TLDR on terrain control points is we would like to be able to design an environment that changes based on the faction that controls it. And say this is more a Tuatha environment, this is more an Arthurian environment, and all of that. Things that inform this are going to be capturable indicators of like the state of the realm war, and right now our examples of those are these keeps and towers that we're talking about. And so as we turn this particular map into a big keep with some little towers around it, those will start to be terrain control points, which will start actually informing the look of the environment. And so that's as part of like, where are we going from here? What do we want to do with this? That's one of the goals that we're moving towards.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit of background info here that when we originally did the control point work, it was a very quick, I think it was like a few hours of Andrew's time, and we used the procedural terrain generation system to set this up. So we literally hook up, which this is neutral and this is each one of the realms, and then when that realm takes over, do this. So if you had 3 points, it would go halfway to the next control point, and then all of this would change as designed in the terrain system. So as Tim is saying, like, if you took over a keep, we could then, from that point out, go 100% down to 0 halfway to the next control point over there, that's say the Viking zone. When we did this the first time, we got a lot of like, who was saying like it would kill the client? Was that Rob or something? We'd get these just massive pauses. We hadn't done as everything changed, as all the trees changed. And I'm sure there was a lot of other things other than what I'm visually describing, the trees changing.
There was like lots of grass, and so like...
Oh no, I was just saying like code-wise, there's a whole bunch of underlying stuff that I'm not aware of. But since then, we've had this plan that we got George in. George had this whole threading library, and that's basically making use of all your cores, doing memory allocation smartly, better than we were doing before. So he went through a pass of the terrain system. Brad then took almost what he had finished of the terrain system, finished it up, improved the threading library, and then has now moved, after the segmentation work, has actually moved back into terrain around the concept of control points. So he's literally working on it right now, so I don't have too many concrete things to say, but the goal right now is that the threading work done on the terrain generation has improved the speed at which the swaps will occur. One of the things I need to do is give Brad just a bunch of zone changes that throw a bunch of trees, rocks, and grass and textures. Just watch all that memory change. Now the cool thing is, so control points we used for the control game we used a long time ago, and we had a point system, and as long as you took a control point, you gained points, and that was a lot of fun. So we know we're going to use these for other things. However, one of the conversations we've hit many times when it comes around to look and feel of the game and look and feel of a realm is being able to change the ambient tracks that are playing, change the lighting, set up for future things like post-screen effects, just like a little bit of a blue tint, say for the Vikings, or a little bit of a green tint when you're in some creepy mine. We haven't had the functionality to do that, and it's been one of those things that we've said we'll have to do later. So the cool thing that was happening is Brad and George and Andrew still need to get together, but they're trying to figure out a way that we can kind of get a 2-for-1 here, so that the control point code can be used as an attachment point for variables like different ambiances, so that if you're in a forest we know that control point is there, and we can say, okay, when you get closer to this control point, you start hearing, say, different types of birds, which becomes even more relevant when you say that hawks are playing in the background for the Arthurians, and ravens for the Vikings, and I think it was owls for the TDD with some of DB's early concepts. So they still have to discuss this, but we might get a bit of a 2-for-1 where we can kind of change some of the ambiances, which would be totally awesome moving into beta 1 because it would be bonus.
And Tyler said might.
Yeah, might.
Let's be very clear that this is still in the talk and would be cool if stage.
Yeah, so we're still going to work on control points, just whether or not we get this extra piece would be the bonus.
One of the interesting points of timing here is per the discussion, the mini talk I had earlier about our scene lock, is that original implementation, per being a different team, was made before we had George's really cool threading library, and one of the pain points has been basically these disparate threading solutions interacting with each other. As part of our new scene lock solution, it's more heavily utilizing George's library, which means that will also more cleanly interact with the terrain stuff that Brad is working on. So it's an interesting coincidence, but a fortuitous one.
Yeah. Let's see. Number 7. Ability bar visual design. So JB and AJ have been working on the player inventory. We've done a couple of streams, maybe 3 weeks back and 4 weeks back, of AJ working on the inventory. It's a lot of work. AJ is a junior engineer. JB has been overseeing him and constantly reviewing stuff and shuffling stuff off to him. It's taking longer than we wanted to, but both of them are putting in the extra time to try and get it in as soon as possible. While they are working on that, they've started meetings on the ability bar design. Just like with everything UI related right now, some of the concepts that you're going to be seeing visually that we share, we are not committing to all of that stuff for beta 1. There's a lot of work involved in all of this. So right now, just like with inventory, we are like the battle groups UI, there's some of that stuff that isn't part of the beta 1, but it's trying to figure out where we want to go with these things. The ability bar is going to need some work, so they've started meeting on that, starting to task that out. James Koo has started working on the visual side of the layout of this and how it's going to work, and what we'll need to decide as we move into the work is how much of it we're going to commit to for beta 1 versus during beta. Portal marker concepts, this is a quick one. So
Did you talk about icons?
Oh, sorry, icons.
Number 8, icons.
Do you know how many times
I don't know. Could you tell me?
Do you know how many times I don't rub your nose in it when you make mistakes?
I make mistakes.
It reminds me of Rick and Morty.
Now that was a mistake.
So this was just a kind of a wrap up for James Koo. He finished about 150 icons for the inventory and for the damage types. And one of the things, like the way I kind of wrote it here, was like, this is a massive amount of work, and you've basically got this little bit of tiny vector art that needs to convey something very clearly and concisely. It goes through iterations with the team. We look at stuff, we figure out, does that even make any sense? So that was kind of like a, hey, good job, we got through 150, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to do. Portal marker concepts. For beta 1, we're going to need to be able to get you guys around the world fairly quickly, not only for testing, well, actually, that's pretty much what I want to say. Pretty much for testing. Part of this is like we might just stick a portal so that you're not having to run long distances. We might turn those off so that we want you to run long distances. There's a lot of use for these, particularly getting you to like safe islands where we don't want other realms to have access to. So these guys are basically markers. We've kind of got our own styling. Each realm has we've made a generic one, and we've made a realm-specific one so that if you find it, or if you see it on the horizon, it's very different than a generic one. You'll know, okay, that one's a Viking one. I'm not a Viking. I don't need to run all the way over there to find out I can't use it. Those will take you to areas that other realms don't have access to. So over the last few weeks, we've been doing concepts. You've seen 3D models of the Viking and the Arthurian ones. I would love to today to get some art time in and work on those. Last week we weren't really happy with the TDD version, so I kind of wanted to do like a behind the scenes. Just people don't always show like, hey, we didn't like this, it didn't work out. So last week I put in some images of what Michelle had done, or actually John had started with a 3-dimensional sketch, and then Michelle worked on it. None of us were feeling it. So this week, Michelle started on a new concept, which she streamed earlier this week, and we all love that way more. So we'll have some cool concepts of that one, and then probably next week we'll have John. If we all like it, we haven't done a final review on it, then John will start working on that next week. Mines. Okay, so Mines is really fun, and I've been watching Dion over her shoulder here. So I'll just preface this again as I usually do. During beta, we want to do something that we call bubble tech, which would allow you just to walk into a cave entrance and go into another zone, and that whole zone would be a whole underground mine system, caves, catacombs, what have you. We don't have all of that tech right now. We haven't committed to that tech for beta 1, but we did realize that for the seamless zone transitions and portaling, we're kind of, at least for portaling, we're kind of there. We can jump you to another zone. So we were like, well, crap, we could probably make a mine. And by we, I think Mark was the one who went, oh, could we make mines? So Dion has been working, if you've caught any of her streams, she's been, we took a bunch of Unity and Unreal Store assets as starter points, updated all the materials to a PBR system. We've started adding in our own flair. We've started creating new assets for it. This week, what we did was kind of a look and feel white boxing. How tight should the spaces feel? How, what is small, what's medium, and what's big? We got through that phase. Dion, I gave her a whole bunch of assets to work with. She's just propping out kind of the look and feel of it. We've gotten past that initial approval of just the way it looks, and she's continuing working on an area. The fun thing, Dion and I were actually running through it, and she says she didn't get scared. Apparently I was the only one who got scared. We have a gray model of just a character that's roughly 2 meters tall, and we throw him in our scenes all the time just to make sure our scale is correct. And when Dion exported this whole maze out, she left one of those little gray guys standing there. So we go into it, and pretty much all you've got is your torch. You can't see shit. So it's very easy to get lost, and I was running around very quickly through these, and all of a sudden I came across this gray shape, like a Slender Man scare kind of thing, and I went, Jesus, because I was like, first I was like, how did someone get in here? Because we were running on a, just locally, and then I was just like, oh crap, that's just a guy. But immediately that was pretty cool because I could see other players running around in this thing. I mean, two realms, oh shit, I gotta fight all of a sudden. So there's a lot of fun gameplay that I think is going to come out of this. So the first thing we're going to do is put together a rough area just kind of for look and feel. We're going to let backers have access to it and run around in it and just get some feedback. Do you like it? Does it feel too tight? Where are you getting stuck? What's too big? Whatever your feelings are on it. Once we get that pass done, we'll start making a bunch of Lego pieces. And that's in lieu of more robust systems like doing this procedurally. So what we'll have is a whole bunch of pieces. We'll let design like Mark and Ben just kind of figure out a bunch of mine areas that players could run through, so that instead of what we originally planned for beta 1, which was you would walk up to a pile of rocks or into a little pile of rocks, which you can actually see on one of the maps right now, and then you gather something, we're actually going to have you probably walk into this thing, and we'll probably put a little visual icon there to represent like go to here, and then we'll pop you into a full zone of an actual mine, which should be a lot more fun than what we originally planned.
On the sort of design / interesting from someone who isn't an artist watching all of this, one of the things you don't think about a lot of times is like sometimes you want these mines to feel claustrophobic. Like there is a mood, and Tyler was talking about like somebody's going around a tight corner, and because we're in a video game where your camera is way up over a guy's shoulder, you don't think about how tall you have to make things just so that it's not immensely claustrophobic. And so if you make it such that it fits your guy in the way it would in reality, like your camera is going to be down here smushed next to your guy's head. And so when you guys are giving us feedback, like that's one of the things to pay attention to is how claustrophobic do you feel as someone who has an avatar running around in these tight spaces, and how claustrophobic are you with your camera like bumping into the walls and stuff like that?
And one of the things
but just watching you guys iterate on that.
Yeah, in conversations with Mark and Ben, like this is a bit of a sandbox type of idea. We're not trying to solve for everything. Everything is not a combat space. Some of this is like tight little areas that you're going to have to deal with. We're not trying to make an arena out of this thing. We're trying to make something that feels like a mine. So you should be running down something that feels like a mine shaft, which may then open into a wide cavern. But you should have to make choices that you're going to go into this thing knowing that the gameplay is going to be different depending on where you are in this thing. You may have close quarters combat. You may not be able to get your buddy who's behind you a clear shot. There's a lot of things that will happen by making this that I think will be a lot of fun and should be a little frustrating at times. There are problems for players to solve as gamers of how you want to play when you're in something that's not just like what we've had, a big open grass field or a forest or some rocks and caverns and stuff. Okay, so animation. We've been doing a lot of animation work. I have a lot of words. We've kind of already gone long on this.
Good time.
So one of the things I've said to both Sandra and Scott is it seems to be less about doing good animations and more about how those animations should look and how they're going to work with our system. This has continued to be an exploratory process because we are building a game that none of us have built before and nobody has played yet. So just trying to figure out something like deflect or something like flinch. There's a lot of work that is not only kind of A to B type of work, like where am I starting, where's my character at any given point in time, and how is he going to get from A to B to deflect? How long should that be? How should that feel based on what weapon he has? If I've got a mace, a club, or a sword, how does a pierce, how do we convey a pierce in its timing that is different than how we convey a slash? What three-dimensional space around the character should we use for a high, a mid, and a low? When our character flinches, how much of a flinch should he play? How long is that flinch going to actually play, and could that flinch be interrupted by an ability? There's a whole bunch of these really, personally I find them very exciting problems to solve and constantly think about, but creating kind of an animation system for a game is a lot of problem solving. So as it's a user story end of month, sorry. One of the things I did is we had a card in there that was like something prototyping for the new animation system, and I had stuck polearm stuff, great axe stuff, running, unarmed combat, all these different things were kind of in that card. And a lot of that was in there because we were prototyping. We were trying to figure out, what does a swing look like? Does the swing work with the animation system? What is a prep? What is a recover? What's a long prep? What's a longer recover? There's all these little pieces that we have to take for the ability system. One of the more difficult ones is this prep and recover, where I'm standing here ready to thwack you with my sword. My prep phase is transitioning for the swing, then I do my swing, and then I come back to my idle pose. And those are things that the timing actually changes based on how you build your ability. So we have to kind of have this middle ground of the timing and then come up with other ways to solve, am I a longer prep, am I a longer recover? Because we still need your swing to go off. There's a whole networking conversation here, just like if you look at Andrew's jump stream where he was working on the networking for that, trying to convey all of this around an ability system that literally changes the timing on the animation system has been very difficult and a lot of fun. I've been very happy over the last couple of weeks that just overseeing some of this with Scott and Sandra that I've been able to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I think we know what we need to do and how we need to do it. So what I've done with the user stories is pulled out great axe, polearm, staff, all the different weapon types, and I'm starting to turn them into their own individual cards. For Beta 1, what we're doing is we have a rough pass. All the weapons have a rough pass. They're really quick animations. They're not very solid, but for all the stuff we need to do, they're great. We are now starting to replace those using the new animation system, using all the new concepts. So what we're doing is a mid-swing of each damage type for each weapon using an offensive stance. We have the concept of stances. Real simply, I'm in an offensive stance, I'm going to get you, I'm in a defensive stance. And the minute I move my sword from here to here, it changes all the animations and you have to do them all again. So right now what we're focused on is offensive stance, so I'm ready to get you, and we're going for one mid-swing. That'll be for the slash, a pierce, and if your weapon supports it, a crush. Once we get through those, We'll start working on the highs and the lows. We'll start working on other stances. We'll start working on more class-specific stuff. But right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense of us just to do everything, all the animations, before we get more feedback, before we get more playtime on the game. So just so you guys know, over the next several months, as we keep adding more animations, more VFX, more sounds to the combat, to the abilities, just know that all the pieces are purposefully not there, and we're just going to keep adding to them as we go. And as we get proven correct, we'll just move forward with those things. As we add more functionality to the animation system, like deflect works in the ability system, it doesn't work in the animation system. We've only done a few deflects. We'll go, okay, that works, and then we'll start adding in the deflects for all the other weapons. It's actually a really, at least for me personally, gratifying problem to kind of be solving over the last few months. And hopefully you guys give us a whole lot of feedback when we start kind of thwacking each other more often.
They'll give us feedback, don't worry.
So that was kind of my preface, and like I said, it's very important that we convey what the scope of Beta 1 is, so that you guys aren't coming in and going, oh, why aren't there 400 perfect animations? So this week, Sandra's been working on the one-handed weapon stuff, and this is a whole nother problem that needs to be solved, and we've actually kind of gotten to a point where we feel we've solved it. She's been working on club and sword, and that includes the attacks, the deflects, the flinches, the jumps, the runs.
There's a whole lot of watching pantomiming from the other side of the room.
So right now we've got this, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch the weapons so that we've got 2 one-handed swords and then 2 clubs. Because right now, once these new animations go in, if you were to put a one-handed sword in your left hand, your pose would be this. It would be using the old animations. If you put it in your right hand, it'll be using the cooler, better version like this. So we've got to get through those permutations, and that just bleeds into spears, daggers, shields, axes, lots of cool stuff. And like I said, each one of those needs a solution that an axe feels slightly different than a mace. And then Scott has been working on the two-handed greatsword work. Maybe 2 months ago, I think, he was working on the greatsword animations using the old system, old ideas of how we were doing things. So now he's going back, working on, last week we showed a mid-swing with this, so now he's got deflect, flinch, and cape and skirt polish. What?
Your gray dude.
My gray dude? Yeah. Yeah. So Scott is just kind of continuing working down this. I've basically got a whole sheet of to-dos now that feels like we know what we're doing. To finish off on 13.
14. Gotcha.
You guys are so...
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, but you get grouped into this. Okay, so 13, Ben has been taking all the VFX and SFX needs and animations that we need for all the different abilities for each of our archetypes. So it's kind of going at it in sets of 3. He broke down the archers a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and that's kind of taking things in phases. So I've taken the Blackguard, Forest Stalker, and Winter's Shadow cards, and I've changed up the tasks on them to be more representative of the new VFX systems, the new animation systems, so that we can check them off a little bit more appropriately. And what this is going by phases. This is the same thing that I just kind of said with animation, that we are trying things out. There isn't really a point for us to make everything super specific right now. So we've broken everything down in phases so that we can get a lot of generic assets in the game faster to get testing going, so that we can then go, okay, well, things are working, great, we'll keep doing what we're doing. Oh, it's not working, well, we haven't overreached, we'll dial back, we'll come up with a new solution. So if you go look at the archers, now that the animations are working better, we've got VFX and sounds on a lot of the archery mechanics. I think DB said some of the archery sounds broke, he's got to fix. So Mike has been going through and trying to figure out weapon trails. We don't have ribbon tech yet, which is just a different way of showing kind of what looks like a weapon trail. So Mike is trying to, in lieu of that tech as of right now, figure out how to use the changes in the particle system to make weapon trails. and we want to go with kind of a fairly subtle effect. We're not going for full-blown, you know, yellow streaks and shit through the screen. You like that, huh? So we're going subtle right now, and Mike's kind of coming up with a bunch of generic looks for all the different things we're going to need. And the good thing is once he kind of figures out one rough solution, all he has to do is make permutations of that and apply it fairly quickly to all the other weapons. So that's just things are kind of going to come together quickly for just play testing as we just add in new animations, new sounds, new VFX. But I was saying he's also working on these blood splatters. So I swear every time I look over to his screen, there's like some unhappy guy with like a fountain of blood coming out of his shoulder, and then it'll be, oh, it's coming out of my leg, oh, it's coming out of my chest. Earlier today, the guy had like all this frost effects coming off of him, and so it's really entertaining to sit next to Mike. And then actually, anecdotally, I understand artists. And Mike and I were talking about one of the torches, and he was like, yeah, I just don't like it. It just doesn't have very much volume. And I was like, okay, that's not something we need to worry about right now. Work on all the ability of VFX. Like 3 hours later, I look over at his screen, and he's got the torch on his screen, and I looked at him and I went, and he goes, I know. He closed it. I was like, you work on the torch later. I said, at least I know what it's like being an artist. I know you want to make it amazing. Okay. So that wraps it up. Like I said, there's a lot that's happened this week, even though we haven't had a lot of testing. So once we get all this craziness with the scene lock shit fixed, we'll be headed towards testing a lot of this stuff as well.
How much Q&A do you want to do?
I don't care. Half hour.
Okay.
Days.
I might have a Janet might be showing up with my daughter soon-ish. I'm not really sure. So she'll come running over here, interrupt it, and I'll have to probably excuse myself.
All right, well, ask questions until Tyler's daughter shows up, folks.
I actually said, so I told Mark I would talk him up a bit, because I said I was thanking him profusely. I've had a whole bunch of just family logistics and life things happening. Wife is down in Atlanta right now. My daughter's had like new babysitters, and the last 2 times I picked her up in the evening, she's just been in tears, and I want to be with you, I miss mom, and I was just like, okay, this isn't working. And I told Mark I was having some difficulty with it. He was like, Janet can go pick her up. So, I said, like, thank you so much, best boss ever. Like, his wife, Janet, is driving over to get Zoe right now, bring her down here so she can just hang out in the evening with us. So thank you, best boss ever.
All right. Toronto Mans would like you to acknowledge them. Tyler, I don't know what that means. But
Toronto Mans would like me to acknowledge them?
Mm-hmm.
I think you just did.
I'm using a gender-neutral pronoun because I don't know that Toronto Mans is a man. All right, moving on.
I don't know what I'm supposed
Toronto Mans.
Hi.
Thank you.
I'm acknowledging them?
Yes. That's how that works.
Thentanos asks, for Tyler and Tim, if you had to put all your in-game money on a Beta 1 launch date, would it be in 2017?
I am not commenting on anything having to do with Beta 1 launch date at this time.
That's a good question.
We'll talk about this soon. I mean, he's talking about... I'm not even going to comment. We'll get you guys information when we're ready to get you guys information. I'm just happy that everybody's excited.
Odilvik asks, being able to stoop, duck, or crawl within mines would seem to be useful. Are these movement modes going to make it into the game?
So, related to this, but not the answer to it, just earlier, Dion was trying to show Tyler some of the work she'd been doing on one of the maps, and she'd made one of the doorways just a smidge too small. I was like trying to get the right angle to sort of wedge herself through this little doorway that she was just a bit too tall to get through, and it was sort of
I'm pulling
funny
up chat.
watching that.
I'm paying attention. Yeah, we were saying like what would be fun, what we could do right now is make a Lucrepan sized opening.
Just like a doggy door?
Yeah. Well, just make like a shorter opening, because
that's what I said.
Your capsule's different. So you should be able to make like an opening that only a Lucrepan can go into. And we do definitely want to do things like that, and we've talked about crawling and stuff like that. There's no immediate plan to do that. We would like to do that. It just it's more animations, more text, so it's not a soon thing.
Master Builder Swazi asks, after having tried building during the tests, I've noticed that the physics system is unrealistically restrictive as far as how creative we can get with building. It seems like if blocks are not stacked vertically, your building will not stand up on its own. I'm not looking for crazy overhangs and whatnot, and I know it's a work in progress. But do you guys feel that physics will be toned down a bit, or some blocks will be made to be stronger?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so stability was kind of a rough pass. I mean, I think that's accurate to say from Rob's perspective, or at least it was, here's my first implementation of it. And getting it to work is kind of one of the first hurdles you have to do. You know, after you've got the car running, then you can mod it. So the next step, per the crafting system, is different stats on different block types. We only have 2 block types in there right now. Making block types is something we just haven't done yet. We can do that. Not only can we make blocks, we just need to make the blocks with the different structural integrity
right,
stats.
Yeah. So we've got there are a couple different forces. So
yeah, there's
it doesn't
more.
It doesn't go straight down. There's shear forces and compression forces. You can put a doorway in, and the stuff above the doorway won't fall down. So you know, we have some of that. The other parts, as Tyler says, right now we've got stone and wood, and so stone is heavier and it'll smush wood, but it makes a good foundation, and so you can do some stuff with that. We've been talking recently about getting you guys some more materials, substances, I think we call them substances, which would be like block types. So, you know, stone versus wood versus
types of
granite
stone,
versus whatever. So that they will have some different properties there. I don't want to commit to saying physics will be toned down, but we're absolutely going to go through a phase once we're more comfortable with the state of building and say, okay guys, try and build stuff, tell us where the pain points are, and we will iterate on it and improve it per feedback.
Yeah. Right now we're still working on big plots. Oh, I've got noise coming on I wanted to have chat on here. Yeah, right now, like we've said, it's one thing after another. It's stability is the next thing we're going to be looking at, and so this will probably affect some of that.
All of that being said, we want to see cool, badass, neat-looking structures
That don't fall apart.
So I expect we will do some things to facilitate this cool mix of fantasy and medieval and all of that to make functional, cool-looking, defensible structures. And so we will be doing things to facilitate that to some degree.
Yeah, part of the longer-term goal is that you can mess around in Cube, try a bunch of different materials, and go, okay, this big archway that I'm trying to build, I can't build with these materials, you know, here, and here. For structural reasons, you try a different material and it works. And then you would take that knowledge into the game and go, okay, if I want to make this really cool thing, I'm going to have to go gather this material and bring it to my plot so that I can make the thing I want.
Right.
Miatalis asks, with melee and archery animations, there is a nice opportunity to use real references. How are you planning to approach healing and magic animations that don't have direct references, or make them as detailed and have realistic choreography?
That's easy. Make it look cool and start off with some shared resources. Shared resources is simply just the number of animations we have to do. We're going to start off simple, just like we are with weapons. You know, nice mid-slash that covers high, medium, low for now. Same thing with magic. It's going to be looks cool.
Though, sort of on that topic, there was an interesting discussion Tyler and I had a few days ago about, like, Ben actually goes in and does research into classic fighting styles using different, you know, martial arts and different weaponry and tools and all of that. And it's interesting finding the balance between period accurate fighting styles and what reads well in telegraphs in a game and also looks cool. And so there's a balance being made there between historical accuracy, actual, you know, fighting veracity, and badassery.
Yeah, so like I said, Ben is working on the breakdown for the healer archetypes. Part of what I will do to stay ahead of the people doing the work as a producer is start working with Scott and Sandra to try and figure out, okay, what are the pieces we need for these guys? In the case of our guys, we've got a guy who hucks rocks at you to heal you, and we've got another guy who hucks bottles at you to heal you. So we're going to definitely need some throwing animations. We've also got kind of more of the magic-y type of feel where you're going to need to hold your focus, and what we've been talking about is your focus as a thing that floats in your hand. So the focus can technically be anything. We've talked about it as a book. We've done some models. I'm sure if you go back in our updates, there's pictures of some of the focuses. And this thing, hovers, and it's something you'll need to cast spells. So at a simple state, we've done this. We've kind of said, oh, we're going to need this because you're going to be going, okay, based on my ability, I am working on it, and now I'm firing. Part of what we're going to have to figure out is, one, does this work and does it convey what's going on, but how does this differentiate from other spells? What three-dimensional space do I need to go like this so that I can see that the guy is doing that? Will people be able to say that this is enough that I see from a distance? There's a whole lot of what you see is what you get that we want to try and convey. So we'll be taking our own knowledge of what we think looks cool, what we've done, and what we've seen in other games. What we've done in other games as well, and take that and figure out how it's going to work for us. It'll start out minimal. Main goal will be like, let's get some nice, solid, cool animations first before we go wide. But if you have any historical documents of witches casting spells, feel free to send them to us. Not a joke.
Nice.
Maybe there'll be something cool come out of that.
Unknown RH wants to know, is it Friday the 13th or Tyler the 14th?
That's not helping.
Emmer1 asks, question, anything in place...
Did you make some kind of hand gesture?
I would never do that.
Emmer1 asks, is there anything in place to keep folks from data mining assets from the game and spoiling a future content or announcement?
I don't know. We're not at that state to worry about that yet.
That's future Tim's problem.
Yeah.
Not as of yet.
Unknown RH asks, you are making biomes for the world. How will you work around the visibility if a fight breaks out in a biome with high altitude trees?
Not quite sure what the problem would be.
All right.
Can you rephrase it? Are you looking for are we talking about like I'm in one area and I can't see a fight, or just we're all fighting in an area that is very dense? I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Add some more details, Unknown RH, and we'll come back around to it. Briar C asks, I've been away for a while and was wondering how far the places of power are coming along. Has one been implemented on an internal map? And is the code and VFX for such places of power in the plan for Beta 1, Beta 2, or Beta 3?
Beta 1, there's going to be a place of power. Places of power can kind of be anything. It's a very open term. We've worked on a model for the place of power. It needs more work. I can just tell you from an artistic perspective, Dion is a junior artist. She's absolutely fabulous, but there's... And I'm being serious when I say that. I don't know if you made me faces.
Never do that.
But there was just some she had gotten it to a point where I just needed to wrap my head around the work done. So there's some more work that I'd like to do, make the materials on it better. It's if you looked, all the concepts have been out there several times of this big bowl over kind of a caldera. I'd like to do more art on it. Is certainly a playable piece right now. Probably as we approach Beta 1, it'll probably get some more love, more cleanup. Just like I said, it's playable right now to run around on. Putting the actual volumes, the idea with the gameplay around this particular one is that you will be able to go to the center of it, receive some sort of buff either for yourself or for your realm. I can't remember the specifics that Ben has talked about, but we need to have like a trigger volume that does something, and that little piece is still just kind of sitting in the background for someone to work on.
I think we have the ability to do something like that. It would just require more programmer intervention than you want from that sort of tech right now.
Yeah.
So the missing piece there is just basically empowering Ben and Mark and Tyler, anybody using the zone editor, to hook up these sorts of effects themselves without too much or any programmer intervention. So we could make it happen right now if we really wanted to, but if we just give it a little bit more time, then we can empower our content.
Right now we're more focused on just number of people we have and things that need to be done anything that's kind of combat and ability related is more general combat and ability related versus this little functionality. So once we get that thing put in and we've got players running around on it and they're all hitting each other and no other problem has occurred, then we can work on this little piece. Working on that piece ideally gets us other things like being able to add that functionality to, say, like a plant that spits out poison. So as you walk by it, it poisons you.
Well, we've also, the sentiment there of, we want to be able to enter the place of power and gain a buff for some duration. Like, we sort of already do that. Anybody who's walked into the lava/water, like, you get a debuff just by walking into basically a volume there. So we've already got the tech to drive this sort of stuff. And we've got the zone portals, which can be placed in the zone that are, you walk into it and we take you to another place. And so there's just a little bit of a gap there where we sort of need to unify these two things such that they're completely at the artist's disposal.
Yeah, and the thing actually, there's I think Ben just he didn't actually put the model in there. Because like I said, the model needs some more work, just breaking it up into different pieces, lotting all those different pieces, and then placing them all as individual objects. Right now, I think Ben just took a rough piece of it. It's on beta small map 2, I think, sitting in the corner.
It's on one of the small maps.
Yeah, and for right now, that's just kind of placeholder placement of it.
Tranquilizer 406 asks, question, are there plans to integrate active environment effects, i.e. plants or shrubs lighting up as an enemy walks through, or areas that could cave in for traps? It would be interesting to see how environment effects could affect PvP strategy.
Yeah, there are plans to do things like that, just not particularly for Beta 1.
Our unknown RH asks, in Q you have mainly wood, concrete, bricks, and marble. Do you plan to implement metals too?
I don't know what Mark's plans are in terms of the entire gamut of substances, but there's going to be some interesting
Yeah, he's been working on wood and stone. I don't recall much discussion around metal off the top of my head. I know you will have to mine metal, but I don't know that it's ever, as far as I'm aware, been discussed in relation to building materials. But I think with the design that Mark's
That's a good question for the next time Mark's on stream.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Odilvik asks, we've been told we can drop down from trees, etc. Will the physics system allow players to swing down with the use of a rope?
Probably not.
Yeah, no. That's a bit much. I love the fact that one of the things I've found about working on this game is that everybody is so excited about the game that they have so many fun ideas, and the reality of it is a lot of these ideas take a lot of time to work on. So there's certain things that we definitely want to do, and then we get into permutations of, is it really useful to swing down off of a rope versus just jump out of the branches of the tree? And that's when we start kind of looking at, like, which would you rather have, like, a bit of more siege engines and more siege mechanics, or swinging off of a rope from a tree. And that's where we have to just start weighing the logistics of how much value any one feature gets. But on the other hand, I totally appreciate all the enthusiasm and all the different kinds of weird ideas that people come up with, and we get a lot of really cool ideas, like just the other one talking about cave-ins.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. I hadn't thought of that.
And so I assume part of that question stems from the fact that we're doing server-side physics, which means we have all of the stuff in PhysX, in NVIDIA's PhysX, available to our disposal, including stuff like swinging from ropes and stuff like that. The problem isn't doing it on the server or doing it on the client. It's doing it on both and making it look good for everybody. And so we have to be very careful where we take features like that because of the cost and difficulty in doing it in a multiplayer environment.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you guys, when you're talking about teams working on these games, you don't want people constantly saying yes, because if someone says no to you every once in a while, it means they probably know the amount of work that gets involved in some of these things. Like, I know that we want to add in all this really cool stuff, but there is a crap ton of work that goes on with each one of these little things. So whenever we say probably not, it probably means we know that this is a lot of work. At least for what we're doing right now.
Getting some questions about whether there's going to be a weekend test.
No, so you probably just missed the preface. We're still working through one of those top 10 items, the scene lock. Things are just too borked right now.
Yeah, there's a great big focus on client stability right now, such that it's just not worth it to get you folks in there because client stability is a problem right now.
Jack Haas Test asks, has anything been said about a persistent server for login at all times?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Can you clarify? Like, are you talking about just like a login server that you can log in at any time because we've got that? Or are you talking about like a game server that you can play on because our IT guys have that 24/7, our alpha and beta guys don't? Or are you asking about a 24/7 server that would be accessible to betas come beta? So just give us a little bit more
Did that
details
one guy
about your
come
question.
back with any clarification on the trees?
Yes. The clarification,
guy.
unknown RH wants to know if it was talking about a dense biome. If the biome is dense, how will you work around visibility for fights in such areas?
That's kind of the point.
That's
of
the
dense
point.
biome.
Yeah. This is
If you're not good in that environment, don't fight in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like what we've said. This is an open world. Everything is different. It's not an arena all the time. Some areas are going to be harder to fight in than others, and you need to plan appropriately for that. That's part of the cool part about the ability system is you can make when we were originally working on the ability system, the first pass of it, like I would make a set of abilities that was like these really quick hits. I'd make a set of abilities that were these long ones, and they were meant for like I'm way the fuck over here, and I want to take time, conjure up a big fireball and lob at a far distance. But now Tim is running straight at me. I need to just pepper him and slow him down as he's coming at me. The same thing is going to be true when you're fighting in an open plain versus a dense forest. You're going to need to learn to play differently in that area. Now, when it comes to vision, we've also talked about a vision system that is not part of Beta 1, and that gets into more future systems where you won't necessarily see somebody. Like they could go through a bush and stuff and you won't actually see them anymore, and then they'll come out. We kind of want to get some of that submarines fighting type of feel in a dense forest where I think when I did the pine forest, like I made some big trees kind of all scattered about that you would just kind of move around, and then I made these little dense areas which totally changed the gameplay. So if I'm being chased down by some dude, I can try and pinball through those, or if some guy's peppering me with arrows, I can just duck behind those.
Well, and some of that is also sort of the point of the ability system, and this goes back to founding principles of how our system is heavily horizontal as opposed to other games where your guy can focus himself into, say, skirmishing or guerrilla tactics that allow you to capitalize on the fact that maybe your guild has built its guild city into this dense forest, and your guild could focus on that and hold this forest against all odds and whatever resources are in it, whereas someone else might be better at open field or long hallways or mines for interior spaces or whatever. It's about the choices you make and how you want to play the game. That's part of what we've built in the ability system and part of what makes this work as an open world game.
Yep.
Jack Haas has a clarification on the server question. Talking about 24/7 for either PvE or PvP. Any gameplay that would allow some type of further theory crafting from a player's perspective.
Oh, I think you mean like get into just have. I still
not real
don't
quick.
know.
So when the game launches, to the best of my knowledge, and Mark can come over and smack me if I'm wrong, but the server's going to be online 24/7. We have said that there's potentially some downtime when we need to do like the progression stuff, like if we have to roll up like the King's rewards for the day. We've said there may be some brief downtime for that. So at launch, we're going to have basically 24/7 servers. At beta, that information I don't want to talk about too much right now, but is basically not going to be 24/7 for most of beta. There may be some small servers that are up most of the time. So it's not a simple yes or no question until we get even more details in terms of. So if you want to try and clarify again, are you talking about at launch? Are you talking about at beta? Or are you talking about right now?
There's actually another interesting part to the tree question.
Let somebody else get a question in.
Well, a person was asking about trees interfering with the third-person view in the camera, and that's another thing we've talked about is just how to, like when you go through the trees and trying to have the trees disappear. That's part of the vision system.
It's the same problem as you'll suffer in the mines too with interior environments, and it's just a thing that we're going to continue to iterate on and continue to improve on. So make sure you give us feedback on it.
All right. Let's see. Folks, for the more game mechanic types of questions, like Cordatus and Odelvik are asking, save those up for when Mark or maybe Ben is on. Freedom Sleeping asks, hi, I'm wanting to get into programming, but I don't know which language to start with. Any suggestions?
It really depends on which field you want to go into.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Not that I know a lot about this.
If you want to get into gaming, C++ is generally the lion in the room, but if you're looking for something to cut your teeth on, like jumping into Unity and C# is a pretty good way to cut your teeth.
Laudoween asks, are there any current tech issues that are holding up Beta 1 that you are not certain can be overcome with time? What about launch?
Sounds similar to a question from last week.
It's a good question.
So you make a gif of their thinking faces.
Well, the reality is, you know, when I started on this project, one of Mark's and Andrew's focus was to hit a lot of the hard stuff first. Yeah. So the hard stuff was the number of players on the server, even the seamless zone transition stuff was kind of a thing we wanted to hit, the building size, the frame rate, and we've been doing a good job of all of those, and we're just making them all better and putting all the pieces together.
We're also really pragmatic about this stuff. Like, if it's get into beta or get crazy ass feature, we'll either audit or omit or delay that particular feature, so that we can get into beta.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's right now it's less about one big scary piece and more about just all the little pieces to put things together, which is what we've been focusing on.
And you can see, like, in terms of the user stories and the top 10 for the last several weeks, there's been, you know, hey, we put in this new system, but there's also been we put all this shit together, and so now instead of being, you know, art that's sort of in a vacuum and code that's sort of in a vacuum and game design that's sort of in a vacuum, it's, oh, hey, look, this is a game thing.
Yeah, we need to do that, or it now has become a game thing.
Right.
I mean, we're starting to get to the point where it's more about the little pieces and the glue for user experience as well. We will always have people, that being said, we will always have certain engineers or certain artists working on some of these core issues. There will always be pushing for number of players, frame rate, general performance, and performance is pretty much everything. That will always be continuing. We'll keep iterating on that and making the engine really solid. But around that, we're starting to hit kind of like, okay, well, if I put a plot, I can pick an example. I put a plot in the world, which was hand place a plot. All the plot markers would then pick the lowest point that the plot terrain was at. So if you put the plot on a hill, your markers were all under the ground. Like, that's a thing that we probably want to fix just for look and feel of player experience. So it starts turning into all these little pieces as we put this together. It's something we're starting to really focus on, or have been.
Swazi asks, is there any update on game music? Would it be possible to get some samples at some point?
Sure. DB has, well, actually, if you look at the 2 weeks ago, I think we put in an example from DB, which was
in the monthly newsletter.
In the monthly newsletter, yeah. So there is music there. There's not like these big long tracks that we're working on right now. We're kind of more working on the experience type of music, like when you're in the game and you get these little hints and tones. So
like mood music for the different biomes.
Yeah,
and
and trying to work on what do the TDD feel like versus what do the Vikings feel like. So it's not like we're making a soundtrack right now.
Actually, newsletter number 35 just went up on the website today with Charles's help.
Yeah, so you can go check that out.
Let's see. Do we need to give people any kind of warning? Are we?
I can do this for ages. Do you need to wrap up for anything?
We can keep going. I mean, maybe let's just go for another 5 to 10 minutes, and it's 5:17.
5 to 10 minute warning, folks.
1 to 20-minute warning.
Absalom LNG asks, you've mentioned that projectiles will retain their physics across zone borders. This tech seems like it will really open up what MMOs are capable of. Is CU at that point yet? Is it still in the plan?
Ooh, I'm trying to think of where that is for Colin.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. It's one of the things we have to do. I don't know how I can speak to opening it up for MMOs. I don't know enough here.
There is very cool potential for this sort of thing for any MMO that is doing it or is trying to do it. Historically, anybody who's played an MMO in the last 15 years, it's magic bubble. You walk into the magic bubble or the shimmery wall, and you're in another zone, and your character's reset. That's how zoning in these games works. We want to do that. Is one of the things that we are actively trying to do better at. And if we execute on all the things that we think Hope would like to do, you will be very pleased
Yeah, we actually got to the point we were transitioning the characters back and forth across the bridge tests between zones seamlessly. We were getting a little bit of I don't want to call it a stutter. We were either getting a stutter or a, what do you call it, a jump back?
I don't know, I'm liking the word super over here. Keep going.
And then that helped us find some issues with a lot of the item work that Christina had put in, and we got that down to, I think, one hitch on the first transition, and then afterwards it seemed to be great. And we did some work with groups of people.
Yeah, it still depends a little bit on how quick you're going and what your latency is and stuff like that. That is a system we will continue to improve.
People are asking about rubber banding.
Yeah, okay, they're saying rubber banding in my case. Yeah,
rubber banding is where it's you're attached to a rubber band, and so your guy's running along, and then he pops back. That's what we mean when we say rubber banding. It is a user experience.
Well, I think it was because what I was saying, trying to find the words for this.
Right. Well, he said, "What is rubber banding?"
Oh, okay.
So in case we use that word, or in case you see us use that word, rubber banding is where you just see someone pop back like they're attached to a bungee or a rubber band. And there was a little bit of that. It's tough to describe exactly the behavior we were seeing. It was like your dude took a step back. But we were able to transition from one zone to the next zone without
server to server.
Right. Zone to zone and server to server is sort of from the tech side synonymous. But you were able to go between zones or between servers. Once we get this one minor stutter step out of the way, basically we're calling it seamless. You could not tell that you had gone between the two, except that we've got this one stutter step rubber bandy thing that we've got to knock out, and that the zone ID for the zone you were in changed on the UI.
Yeah, and then we can go into.
But it was real smooth.
Stuff.
You could do it at. Sometimes we use. We've got some admin cheats that let us run faster. Some folks use it more than they should. And even doing that, it was pretty good because we're commuting a bunch of your physics information when you do that, so it maintains your speed. And right now there's still some minor stuff that we're tweaking on it, but progress is being made towards that. We can just move a thing from one server to the next, one zone to the next, and we would like to be able to get to a place where you can just fight on one of those.
Maybe you know what this is. Tim Ugoff85 asks, one of my favorite mechanics from Daok was nearsight, which was underutilized by players but could change the battlefield if used well coordinated. Will Unchained have something similar to the nearsight mechanic?
We definitely have a vision mechanic, and I don't want to speak to that too much because that's in the design space. That's a good question for Ben or Mark. What I do know is that we would like to do some clever things in terms of what players you can see and what you cannot, and what that means in terms of cheat and hack prevention. And so we've got some really cool plans in terms of vision and perception and that sort of thing. I don't know if it's identical to nearsight. And for folks that don't know, nearsight was basically a range debuff. And so if you had a spell that operated on 100 meters and you got nearsighted, it would go to 60 meters.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If everybody just disappeared and you just saw this.
Yeah, exactly.
Odilvik asks, you've had a number of new staff start recently. How up to speed are they now? Is everyone settled in now or still gaining their feet?
I mean,
I'd
from
say,
the engineering side, everybody's pretty much going full bore.
Yeah. Well, the only two people recently were Caleb and AJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sacrex asks, when are you going to fully move over to Discord integration over Trillion?
I don't think we have any info on that. I think someone else asked it in chat, and JP was saying no info.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, looking for some good questions to end on. Odilvik asks, have you patented any unique systems you've developed for CU?
Mark's the patent
Yeah, you have
trademark
to ask
copyright
Mark.
guy. Ask him.
All right. Well, we've actually gotten through the questions, except for goat pets or goat mounts and such things.
You mean like, are we going to have goat pets?
Are we
and
going to
goat
have
mounts?
those?
There's no plans. Actually, there was a really cool concept that Sandra did. I couldn't remember when I put it in one of the updates, and it was for I think it was like travel. No, it wasn't a mount because we're not doing riding. It was
for a caravan.
Caravan.
Yeah.
And it was it had like a sea serpent as a possible. You put it in its mouth or on its back, and it takes it across for you. And it had these really cool goat concepts that could possibly be used for a caravan. It's as far as I got for you for goats.
Briar C wants to know if there are any personal projects you two would mind sharing that are cool.
Assuming, I guess could be work related or not. My personal project that I've got going on is trying to reorganize the structure of environment assets to make it easier for people who are not artists to build, that would also embed in realm variations and would also give us oversight to the pieces of art that we don't have to represent everything. Simply put, here's pine trees, put them all on a map, and then hook up the variations for each one of the realms so that if someone said, I want to put pine trees somewhere, they would say pine trees. And it wouldn't include like terrain warps, it wouldn't include the terrain textures, it wouldn't include bushes, grass, anything else. It would just be trees. And then as they put all those pieces together, everything will swap after the fact. And then this also gives me oversight to revisit all the old assets and then put together a big PSD for Michelle to work from so she can do a little bit of art directing where she can say, okay, that texture needs to be different for the Vikings, or you can reuse this one that we use down here, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of been a personal project simply because I've been very focused on staying ahead of figuring out all the animation needs, figuring out the VFX and SFX needs, working with Dion on the mines and stuff like that. So that's kind of been in the background whenever I get a chance.
Mine, I guess, is sort of in a similar vein. Though,
It's not like it's a fun, amazing...
Yeah, exactly. Mine's
It's
sort of in
work.
a similar vein, though way less interesting, which is outside of Andrew, I'm the engineer that's been here the longest, and so there's just this category of knowledge of like our code of systems that nobody except me or Andrew has ever seen, and then outside of that, like stuff in terms of our server configuration on Amazon and stuff like that, that basically I'm the only one that knows how it works. So I've been working on going through and cataloging all of that, sharing that knowledge in places where it makes sense, like refactoring so that stuff isn't one-off and sort of has systems built around it. So nothing really exciting or sexy, just the stuff that makes our business more productive so that we can get into beta sooner.
All right. Well, are you guys ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll end it on my end with thank you very much, everybody who hangs out and comes to these things, our streams, who has all these ideas, even jumping off with ropes. Clearly it shows excitement over the project. We're all just as excited as you. Please stick with us. Please just jump into tests, help us, give feedback. Tests are getting more and more fun as we get, actual kind of things that feel like a game. Like I said, these little pieces that we're starting to figure out and put together thank you.
Yeah.
I can always end these things on a thank you. You know,
It-
I'm always rewarded with like everyone. I mean, when I sat down to do this, I did this last minute. Like Mark said, I don't feel so good. I was like, dude, I got so many words. I can totally do this. And the first thing I did, I sat down on the couch and I went like this, because it was like the first time, literally from walking in, that I was able just to stop and not do anything. And as tiring as it is, I've got the personality that I love doing this. I love being busy. I love constantly problem solving, and this gives me the opportunity. And then to get onto a stream and have everybody like, hey, when's beta? When's beta? I want to have this. I want to have that. What about this? It's really rewarding and awesome.
And I think, you know, when we decided to do Rehab, when we pushed beta back, it was a really difficult decision for us. We talked about it a lot internally, and it was really difficult moving through that phase of anybody who was there with us right before beta. Like, there was a game, there was guilds coming in and capturing keeps and bombarding each other, and it was really, really fun. And then a couple of weeks later, it was like, okay, you can walk around on the server and everything else is busted because we ripped it out. And we're getting back to a point where all of you that have been so patient with us and waited through it as we've done this refactor, and as systems have started coming online, and as it's become a game again, there's a tangible energy here in the office that's exciting, and we're starting to feel it from you guys again, and thank you so much for waiting with us, for being here with us, for staying here with us, and I really hope that you enjoy the coming weeks and the coming months and what we've got to show, and it's really, really exciting here. And I think those of you that have been in the alphas with us, and hopefully soon some of the extended alphas to bring in the beta guys, you will share our excitement.
Yeah, and the cool thing is when he said, you know, the first version versus now, there's so much more stuff in here. Like, we have so much more functionality. We went through the whole problem of hiring. We did what we needed to do. We opened up another studio. We got more engineers. We've been able to make a whole bunch of progress that we ideally wanted to make a while ago and couldn't because we couldn't find the bodies. But now, as we put these game pieces back together, we've got so much more than we used to have before. And I said, maybe I said it on one of the streams, that like we were trying to just test, go out, gather some resources, go to your plot, pull out your Vox, craft, build in the plot, and it just turned into everybody killing each other within about 10 minutes. Everybody was just suddenly, you know, I'm trying to build my plot, and some asshole comes over and swipes out like a whole section of it because we've got destruction to be really.
You should know that I am some asshole.
Yeah, exactly. So Tim comes blasting by, abusing the admin controls, running really fast, takes a swipe, and my fucking everything crumbles. So it's kind of funny because I know how much work and how much time went into get the thing, craft it, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the code that it took to put all this together, like to go get your resources, craft them into something, put them down on the plot, build this amazing thing, and literally for gameplay, it's almost not represented, like just how much effort and work from a team goes into getting all those pieces together when some asshole comes by and goes and runs off. I'm like, you asshole! And I'm sitting there having a visceral feeling about this because we put all these pieces together, because we've actually gamified this to the point that all these systems work together, and I'm actually now building something, and even only that we have build times only in seconds, that I was actually, okay, I did the work to get my resources, and I put this shit down, and somebody came over and destroyed it. I was pissed off. And it's really cool, because like you're like, oh, we got the game kind of coming together and everything.
Yeah.
Asshole.
If somebody fucks up your building and you don't have like an overwhelming urge to shove pointy implements into their body, then we haven't done our job.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like what we're getting back to. It's been really cool. And I mean, like I said, watching Mike work off in the corner, you know, right now he's just working on these generic effects. And I don't want to sell that too short, because he's over there like trying to figure out like the orientation and position of particles for different parts of the body. Where do they need to sit so that you can see them, so they're not buried inside the body, and so they orient correctly. And he just had like some frosty effects, and I turned and I looked and I was like, oh, is that a frost kind of effect? And he said, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I can repurpose other things. I totally got it. I was like, look, oh, great. Now I've got to see frost damage. You know, things we didn't have before,
Right.
where I'm going to see effects on players, you know, and you're going to see all these mechanics actually working. And then we can start going, okay, we've got some of the basic pieces all in there. You know, I don't need 10 different versions of slow. I just need to know I'm slowed so that we can start figuring out, like, does this feel good? How's the timing work on combat? How's the movement speed? How long does it take to die? How long does it take to kill? There's a lot of this fun stuff we're starting to hit. And like I said, trying to figure out all those little pieces to fit together just to improve player experience. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks.
All right, no test this weekend.
No test.
Look out for the update email with a big user stories update.
Yeah, it's going to be a giant monster, you know, and as I say before, if you want all the details of all the little pieces that we're working on, we're probably the most transparent group you'll ever find. It's all going to be there. If you just want to get to the pretty pictures, just start using your scroll wheel.
All right, see you later.
What did you just do?